Welcome to Narou-Kei Uzumaki, our sincere attempt to contend with and unravel one of anime's most controversial genres. I'm Gwen.
I'm Ruby. Hi.
Hi!
Hey, we're here. This is our first episode of this podcast. We're gonna watch a lot of anime, and hopefully some of it will be good.
Hopefully some of it will be good. Okay, so... what is this? What the fuck are we doing here?
What the fuck are we doing here? Okay, so we are here to watch a lot of anime, a lot of anime of varying qualities. I hope some of it will be good. I believe some of it will be good. But more specifically, if you've paid any amount of attention to like anime, you probably know what isekai anime is, and like you may have some idea of like where that came from and like what the state of the genre is. And we're here to watch a lot of that. We're gonna really we're gonna do our best to like really engage with this on its own level, and then we're also going to use our own metrics that we've developed to sort of like rate all of these shows and like put them on a list in comparison to where they are together, so we can have like a really like strong overview of the genre and like what we like about it and what we don't like about it and like what is interesting to us about it.
Yeah, and it's also worth mentioning that this show in general will be up monthly on our Patreon for our $5 tuning level backers. Right, they get access to the bonus content. This is the bonus content. I think this first one is probably going to go up on the main feed just to give people a little bit of a taste. But
yeah, I mean, after that, you're gonna have to pony up if you want to hear more of this.
And so to talk about like the structure of the show a little bit more, basically we're going to be like discussing like a whole season of anime once a month on the Patreon. Yeah?
Yeah.
Before we get into this month's show, we should talk a little bit about like ourselves, our history with like the genre.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I sort of came to isekai personally from a like position that I think a lot of people share, where like I spent a long time being very like dismissive of it from a point of like never having really seen any of it, because there's a lot to be dismissive of looking at it from the outside. It's pretty easy to point to like a lot of like the sort of like derivative nature of many things, the ways in which like uncritical replications of like specific parts of video game mechanics and like specific power fantasies lead to some like kind of troubling results. It's easy to point to like a real trend of like appeasing a very specific audience that I'm not really aligned with personally. But after a while I kind of like hit a point of being a little unsatisfied with just being dismissive from like an outsider perspective, and like I started watching a few shows and I quickly discovered that, yeah, like a lot of it is kind of bad, but also, in there, I couldn't pretend that I was too good for it once I actually was watching some of it, there's something about it that like I find very interesting. I think that like the genre often like runs up against like stuff that I think is just fun to watch, or like that I think is like interesting to think about. And I like to think about the way that this genre that sort of like sprung up in this very like interconnected self-referential way kind of winds up being in like conversation with itself and evolves throughout that very like specific environment from which it arose from, because it is a lot of web novels being published on a website where people are seeing what is popular and like trying to draw from that and like trying to engage with that, and so it winds up building this sort of like language unto itself that I think is like interesting to look at, and also I just have fun watching an isekai show sometimes.
Yeah.
How about you, Gwen?
Well, for me, I've always had sort of a soft spot in my heart for just like trashy fantasy stuff.
Understandable.
And if you're like a long-time listener of the podcast, I say long time a little bit jokingly, we have like 20 episodes, then you would know that I watch a lot of isekai shit.
Yeah, you pick up the first episode at least of every show that comes out, unless it's just like, okay, the vibes in this one are too bad.
Yeah, totally. Like, I am someone who goes out of my way to like make sure to give like every little thing like a shot. And, I think that makes me really smart about this stuff.
Yeah, you're like more experienced than I am, I think, in this area.
Yeah. I couldn't tell you what the first one I ever saw was, right? Like fucking, I don't know. I don't fucking remember. I remember the one that made me go like, yeah, I'm gonna like pick this up and like make a conscious effort to like see everything that comes out.
Okay, which one was that?
It was So I'm a Spider, So What?
Oh, that was actually the one that got me in too, honestly.
It's just a good one. It's just a good one.
It's just good. It's just fun. It's got like more going on than I expected when I went into it, and it also has like, if you are the sort of person who like is watching a show and is like, I bet in the book version of this I can like see the stat sheet of every character that's kind of appealing to me, then like, hey, that's a show for you.
Oh yeah.
But also, like it's just got like characters I like. It's got like a fun like here's like the layered like mystery of what's going on in the show that slowly unravels, and it's just like it's a pretty good time.
Yeah, totally.
I didn't really realize we like got in the door on the same place like that. I sort of assumed you had like been watching like all of the trashy isekai for a while longer before that.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's not like that was the first one I saw, right?
But it was like the one where it was like, okay, maybe there's something there that interests me that I want to like dig into more.
Yeah, I mean, it was the one that I saw where I was just like, yeah, okay, like I can make this a thing about myself, sure.
Assuming that I'm remembering the air dates on these, I think I saw like Bookworm before that, right? But like that's not a show that makes me feel like, oh, maybe I should look at other isekai stuff, really, because it's doing a different thing in a lot of ways.
Yeah, Sentence of a Bookworm is like it's a way to it's its own thing.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, I mean, now that we've got a little bit of that groundwork established, do we want to talk about what show we're watching this month, or what like watched this month?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that my real philosophy for approaching isekai is that, a lot of it's garbage, but some garbage is your garbage. Sword Art Online is not really my garbage, I've found.
Yeah, Sword Art Online just doesn't do it for me. But we would be fucking cowards if we didn't start off with, like, the one that there is.
Yeah, it's kind of the big one, right? Like, it is in the sense that it was like that it originated as a web novel and like sort of reached this like massive status as like it is just huge. It is just kind of undeniably huge, and I think that you can. There's definitely a lot you can like trace back to it, and a lot you can lay at its feet if you want to be particularly accusatory towards it. And like I don't know how grounded those accusations would be necessarily, but one could do that.
Mm-hmm.
Had you seen Sword Art Online before?
Yeah, I saw it when it was coming out.
Okay. What did you think back then?
Oh, this isn't very good.
Okay. So not a huge difference for you across this decade it's been since Sword Art Online first aired.
Yeah, no, I'm pretty proud of myself back then.
Yeah, I made it a single episode in and I turned it off. Because I was a person who was like sort of into dot hack, right? Like I saw dot hack sign and I couldn't tell you anything about dot hack sign at this point in my life, but I remember being very compelled by it and feeling that Sword Art Online was not living up to those expectations that had been set for me.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll watch dot hack sign for this podcast because right now I couldn't tell you what really happens in that show. But yeah, that was where I was at when I first tried to watch Sword Art Online when it was coming out and it was like kind of generating some buzz.
Mm-hmm.
So neither of us really came in with very generous expectations, and I think we've kind of given up the game on like the fact that neither of us really came out of this loving the show. But like we should still talk about it, right?
Yeah, I mean there are things to talk about. There are things to like.
Yeah, I've definitely like a couple of nice things to say.
Yeah, let's go ahead and talk about it.
Yeah, so I think because of the way that this show works, like it's very cleanly divided into like two different arcs where they play two different games.
Mm-hmm.
So like we'll probably just cover those one at a time. The first one is sort of like, I mean it's the one in the title, right? They play Sword Art Online. Kirito, our hero, is one of the 10,000 gamers who are playing this hit new game. And then they all learn very quickly that they're trapped in the game and they can't log out. And if they die in the game, they die for real.
So scary.
It's pretty scary. I would hate to be playing a game like that. But there's the promise that they will be able to get out of the game if they clear the 100th floor of the game. They reach the top level of the big sky castle that the game takes place in. They beat the boss there. Everybody gets to go home, assuming they didn't die before then. And that's the broad strokes of this. Without getting into like what the actual like events that are depicted in the show are and like who the characters really are, that is what is that's what is presented to us. In case you didn't really know what happens in Sword Art Online, which like I wouldn't blame you for.
Mm-hmm. Which can I say, getting a little bit ahead of ourselves here, it's like weirdly not about that.
It is weirdly not about that, yeah. Now, that is definitely a thing I was surprised by. Like this first half of the season, where they are playing Sword Art Online, was really not the show I expected Sword Art Online to be. And like sometimes that was a pleasant surprise, and sometimes that was like, it is just a different bad thing.
Yeah.
Before we get to that, I guess I kind of want to talk about, like, I mentioned previously that when Sword Art Online first came out, I dropped it at the end of the first episode, and the specific thing that bothered me about it was, like, there is a moment in the first episode where after everyone is stuck in the game, they stop looking like the character they created for the game, and they look like their real selves in reality.
Mm-hmm.
And I was, like, just deeply annoyed about that, because I think it is, like... I think if you are making a show about, like, people playing video games where they create characters, you are giving up a lot to just immediately, like, sideline the potential of, like, any discussion about, like, what people would choose to represent about themselves in, like, a digital space like that.
Yeah.
That was, like, a pretty frustrating thing to me at the time. And I'm, like, still frustrated about it now, but, like, I knew about it going in, so I had made my peace with it.
Yeah, and, like, it didn't even fucking do anything. That happening served no purpose to, the story or, like...
Yeah, like, there's no room for anybody to have to, like, engage with that in a real way, both because, like, the show just clearly isn't interested in it, and, like, because of the recurring characters that we see before that happens, like, they still, like, look basically like the character they created, just, like, a little different. You have, like, half an episode of, like, wrong-looking Kirito, where he's not, like, the exact anime boy that you recognize. But, like, he still basically looks the same.
Yeah, he's, like, 4 inches taller, and his hair is longer, and his face is longer.
I definitely also was, like, really frustrated in this episode when, like, there's a moment where the guy he, like, runs into and is, like, teaching the ropes of how to play the game. Like, they see their real faces, and they're like, this is like, a beautiful moment of connection, because we see the real selves behind the, like, digital lies we've created or whatever. And I just think it's very lame.
Yeah.
But, like, it's okay because the show isn't about that, so we move on from that pretty quickly. I just had to talk about that because that is, like, the speed bump that threw me off the show 10 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
The other part of our premise and, like, the idea of our protagonist that we get early on in the show that is introduced in the second episode is that Kirito, our protagonist, he was a beta tester in the closed beta of Sword Art Online, right? And he was also the strongest and best gamer in the closed beta of Sword Art Online. And everybody resents him for this.
Yeah, right, because not that it's for real, and if you die for real, having that, like, foreknowledge of what's up ahead is, like, like a big advantage. But I'm curious why you wouldn't just be like, cool, they can handle it. I'm just gonna live until they do.
Right. I mean, it is the sort of thing where, like, I understand where the resentment would arise from. I am frustrated by how foregrounded it is in, like, basically every interaction Kirito has, and, like, the motivations that very many people have in the world. Right? Like, it is so constant that Kirito will encounter somebody and he has to keep, like, his god gamer status a secret, or else they'll, like, immediately resent him or, like, cast him out of their social group. And, like, there are multiple characters who, like, basically just become the Joker from, like, being mad at the fact that there are beta testers who know more about the game than them. It is accurate to how some people I have seen talk about being in a closed beta of a video game would behave and talk about, right? Like, it is accurate in that sense, because I think that people who play video games love to think that they are the special person for playing a video game and, like, having done it before anybody else.
Yeah.
But, like, it's just the kind of the thing that I was hoping the show would move on from more than it ever did.
Yeah.
Like, Kirito reveals that he is, like, the best gamer after defeating the boss of the first floor of the game, right? And everybody's like, you're not just a beta tester, you're a cheater, you're a beater.
Yeah, they make up the worst word in the whole world.
It's amazing. Like, I can't fucking imagine being, like, genuinely mad at somebody and, like, coming up with something that lame to call them, and then just having that stick for 2 years while everybody's, like, imprisoned in a video game.
And the way he, like, owns it too, it's fucking...
He's like, yeah, all right. He puts on this whole show of being like, yeah, okay, I'm, like, the sicko lone gamer, and I have to walk my lonely gamer's path and, like, charge ahead of everybody else because I'm just the best and the strongest, and I hate all of you. Because, I don't know, he's doing some, like, I need to be the villain that people unite against shit.
Yeah, and so the other, like, main thing that happens in the second episode is our introduction to what the show is actually about.
Uh-huh.
Asuna.
Yeah. So, Asuna is in the show.
Until she's not.
Right, but, like, in this half of the show, she is, like, in a lot of it. And she is, like, she is the girl. And she is, like, very... I'm beating around the bush. What I mean to say is that Asuna isn't really a character. And, like, I guess that's fine because Kirito isn't really a character. But, like, the way that Asuna isn't really a character is, like, she is good at some things in the video game, you know? Like, there's a line later in the show where Kirito's like, yeah, I mean, I could never match her speed and accuracy or whatever, which, like, I guess is true, but doesn't seem to really matter because Kirito's always the strongest guy. But, like, Asuna is very much there to be the person who's like, yeah, she's good at the game. She's, like, strong enough to keep up with you. She won't hold you back. She'll have your back in, like, a tough moment. But also, like, oh, she kind of doesn't really know that much about video games, you know? She, like... In this first episode that she's in, she, like, doesn't know about, like, how you can see the names of the people you're in a party with, and she doesn't know, like, a lot of these other very basic things. You know, she used her real name in the video game because she doesn't really have a ton of experience with, like, the social norms around video games. Like, it is this really awkward balance of, like, her needing to be both, like, she's like good and cool and strong, but, like, don't worry, she's not as good as you, the person in the audience who's projecting onto Kirito, and she, like, never really escapes from.
Yeah. Right, and, like, there is a version of this character who, like, is a character who I could really get behind. I mean, like, talking kind of, like, vaguely about this whole first arc, like, there are aspects of, like, we could just talk about it. Like, the show is about Kirito and Asuno's, like, relationship and, like, how that pans out.
Yeah. Yeah, we don't have to, like, constrain ourselves to, like, here's the order the events happen in the show. I think we can be a lot more loose, especially when we're getting past the point of, like, here's what the basic premise of the show is like.
Yeah. So, like, there is a version of that I like. Right? Like, what little character, like, does sneak out, like, between both of them, like, I think works to a degree, right? Like...
Yeah, no, I think they do both have, like, individual moments where I'm like, yeah, okay, there's something here, but, like, they're just sort of subsumed into, like, needing to fit the archetypes that they are more than they are characters.
Right, because, like, even the idea that, like, Asuna is someone who can, like, keep up with Kirito, like, totally falls away after a while. Right? Like, there is a period in the show where, like, they're separate. They, like, go their separate ways for a while. And, like, off-screen, Asuna rises to be, like, the second in command of, like, the biggest, like, frontline guild, right?
Yeah.
And, like, that whole thing where they, like, meet up again and are, like, you know, starting to be, like, oh, this isn't just, like, a person who I, like, hung out with a little bit a while ago and, like, thought was cool. Right? Like, I don't know. It just sucks because Asuna being the second in command of that guild is also the start of Asuna just being the, like, damsel character in, like, a really weird way. And it's so strange to, like, introduce that and, like, that aspect of her where she's just, like, the person that Kirito needs to help and save. At the same time as, like, presenting her as the, like, badass who off-screen became the second in command of like, the biggest frontline guild, right?
Yeah, right. Like even as she's doing that, like, so much of, like, Kirito coming back into her life later in the show when she's, like, the badass second in command is, like, him needing to, like, fight other guys for her honor, right? Like, there's, like, this weird fucking Joker murder guy who's, like, following around as her aide and her guard who wants to, like, fight Kirito for her, and, like, the fucking, like, leader of the biggest guilds, like, Kirito, you have to defeat me in combat to, like, win this girl's hand in marriage. It's like, you're not her fucking dad. You just play the video game with her. Like, it would be weird if you were her dad, but, like, also you're not her fucking dad.
Asuna literally walks up to this guy and is like, hey, I want to leave the guild for a while. He ignores her, looks at Kirito. So you're taking her away from me, huh? What if we fought about it? Like, fuck off, dude!
It's pretty awful. I think I was sort of surprised by with Asuna is how, like, immediately settled their relationship is within this first half of the season, because I sort of had an idea in my head of, like, Sword Art Online being the guy of, like, yeah, okay, Asuna's the main girl, but also every time Kirito plays a different game, he, like, meets another girl, and there's kind of some romantic tension there, and, like, that is true. That is still what the show is, if like going by the second half of this season, but, like, also by the end of this first half of the show, like, they're just fucking married, right? And so, like, it just makes it very weird, like, when we get to the second half of the show, like, every time he's got, like, romantic tension with another girl, or, like, even in the first half of the show where, like, he keeps meeting new girls every other episode, like, it's just like, well, what are they here for? Because the whole thing is all settled already.
Yeah. No, Kirito is like a 15-year-old wife guy.
Yeah. He's, like, a 15-year-old wife guy, and he is, like, immediately ready to, like, pursue this, like, very, like, pastoral, like, married life fantasy, like idyllic off in the countryside. Like it is weird to see the sort of, like, harem anime aspirations of this show, like, in contrast to the fact that it's like, yeah, Kirito has, like, a wife and he's committed to that.
Right, like, Kirito's never interested in the girls.
Right. I understand this to be, like, sort of a byproduct by, like, the way it was initially published, because, like, in my understanding, like the first volume of Sword Art Online is just like the story of this first half of the season, and then the second half is like, oh, well, this is like a big thing and it's popular. I'm going to keep going. So here's all these other girls that Kirito met during this time, which like makes them feel even more perfunctory.
Right. Okay. That makes a lot of sense.
Mm-hmm. I guess here I do really want to talk about like the biggest way in which I was kind of like surprised about what Sword Art Online was, because like hearing the premise, I very much expected it to be like, okay, yeah, like it's going to be a show about like Kirito doing good at the game, and like, you know, he's going to like, we're not going to see him clear all 100 floors or whatever, because that would be like a boring and long show. But like, you know, we're going to see him at like pivotal moments, and like the show is just very much not that. For like the first half of it, like after we get past those like introductory episodes, like it is just this very episodic thing of like Kirito sort of being like the lone guy who like stumbles into people's lives and he helps them out a bit and wanders off again, either because like all those people die or he just has to go do other shit.
Yeah, it's fucking trashy isekai mushishi.
Like, it is amazing because like it is one of those episodic shows, but it's also one of those where like every episode like a little more time has passed and like the guy's gear is better.
Yeah, I was gonna mention that later. I think it's actually really fun that like Kirito just has better gear every time we see him in like the first half of the show until he gets his like signature equipment, right?
Yeah. There's definitely like a point of the show that I think is like very silly but like kind of undeniably charming to me. Because it is playing in like this very stock space, but there's just like this slight layer of gamer flavor. Where it's like, yeah, my level's higher now. I've got like a better sword. I've got a different coat.
Of course he dyed it black.
Of course he dyed it black. And so like when it was in that like episodic stretch, that was probably like the best time I had watching the show. Even if I think a lot of those episodes are like very rote and kind of clumsy, right?
Yeah.
Like, you know, there's the episode where he like goes and tries to join a guild and it all goes terribly and like everybody dies. And it's like, it is just the most like brazen attempt to like pull at your heartstrings in the world, to an extent that like I found like won me over in the sense that like I was like, damn, you're just really going for it. Like I wasn't bought into the drama of it, but like by the time it's like, oh, and now this girl that died left a secret message for him that would play on Christmas where she sings him a song. It's just so like, it is like swinging to every fucking like, here's something sad that it can in 20 minutes.
It's really good.
And there's like an episode where he like wanders into like a murder mystery, and that's like, I mean, I think the resolution of it is kind of weak, but there's like a fun trick in there where it's like, oh shit, somebody like did a murder in a town. That's not supposed to be possible. And they have to like figure out how it's possible in the mechanics of the game. And there's like a fun reveal where it's like, oh, how it's possible is that like it wasn't a murder. They just like made it look like a death happened. And you know, it kind of like gets wrapped up in like, oh, and then there's like a Joker murder guild by the end of it. And there's like a guy who hates women, which is like the other kind of person you can be if you're evil in Sword Art Online and not the Joker.
Yeah.
It was fun to like pull up an episode of Sword Art Online every day and be like, I wonder what the story this time is going to be, and like get like these different things every time. It was just not what I was expecting at all.
Yeah, I think that part of the show works really well. And it's kind of funny how, like, most of that is the part of the show that is adapting the, like, perfunctory, like, second book, right?
Mm-hmm. I mean, again, like, these episodes like are like a huge mixed bag. Like, there's the one where he, like, encounters the one girl who's, like, trying to revive her pet. And it's just very, like, oh, the girl keeps being in danger, and, like, Kirito has to save her, and, like, maybe almost sees her panties. And it's just, like, it is just weak and, like, annoying. And then there's also a line in it about, like, Kirito talking about his sister in the real world, who he's, like, technically not related to. So, like, every alarm possible goes off in your head. Like, that's, like, a bad episode.
Yeah. Just gonna go ahead and hang that Chekhov's gun on the wall, huh?
Yeah. Sorry. We're gonna have to talk about that later. The weird, like, episodic stuff is, like, again, like, it was a pleasant surprise. But, like, that does have to come to an end eventually. Like it comes to an end in the form of, like, you know, really recentering on the Kirito and Asuna relationship, which we talked about already, right?
Yeah, which looks like it has, like, a little bit of promise if, like, we, like, get a little bit more about, like, the characters and stuff and, like, really learn more about them. And then just gets worse as it continues.
Yeah.
So they meet up, right? They hit it off again. Asuna wants to like leave the guild for a while. This is all episode like what, 9 and 10, right? I don't know that we necessarily have to go episode by episode, right?
No, we don't have to go episode by episode at all.
Okay. Right. So around like episode 9 and 10, we get the part where Kirito and Asuna are like hitting it off again, and like Asuna wants to leave the guild for a while to like hang out with Kirito. You know, and her guild leader, a man named Heathcliff, is that right?
Yeah, I believe that's correct.
Is like, no, I'll fight Kirito for it. Kirito loses.
Kirito has to join the guild, and he gets like the shittiest palette swap of his like default coat. It is amazing how terrible he looks in red and white.
Yeah, and he fucking hates it too. It's so good.
Yeah, it's a good bit. There's some okay bits in here, you know. Like I didn't hate every second of Sword Art Online.
Yeah. And like his first mission as a guild member or whatever is to go out and do something in the desert. I don't remember.
It's like a training exercise or something, right? And he's like, "Go take this Joker man that hates you with you."
Yeah. Go take the guy that you fucking embarrassed earlier when you were like first meeting Asuna again. And shit goes wrong. It turns out that he's secretly a member of Laughing Coffin, the like player killer like Joker guild.
Uh-huh.
And he murders the other guy that was there to like run the test or whatever, and is about to kill Kirito when Kirito is saved by Asuna, who had been tailing them and then saw that the other guy who was on her friends list had passed away. And so, figured something happened and like rushed forward to like save him. Asuna fights the Joker, and he surrenders. Asuna lets her guard down. He moves into Getter or whatever, and then Kirito just kills him with his fucking hand.
Yeah, this is like one of those points where it's like, like when this happened, I was definitely kind of frustrated because it was like it feels like more than like this is the most dramatically interesting to happen. It feels like an attempt to like prevent Asuna from having to have done anything like kill a guy.
Yeah, right.
Like I think it'd be cool if Asuna killed a guy.
Yeah. Are you kidding me? So like Kirito kills a guy and then cries about it, and then that's when like the relationship like coagulates into we're like a couple now.
Yeah, right. Like Heathcliff's like, okay, sorry, I like sent you off with like a Joker who tried to kill you. I'm gonna give you time off. It's just the nice thing to do.
Yeah.
So they go and buy a house in the woods together.
In like a fucking pastoral fucking like village where like the fishing dads live.
Yeah. I do think the fishing dads are like kind of great. Here's the guys who are just like, yeah, I was like a fucking cybersecurity guy at like a big company, and like I probably don't have a job if I go back, so I'm just gonna like, I don't know, I'm trying to find like a life as much as I can here, and that means fucking going fishing every day.
Yeah, why not be a fucking MMO fishing guy, right? Like,
yeah,
that's a nice safe pastime to do in Sword Art Online, the game where if you die for real.
As long as you aren't trying to fish up the fish that kills you, but like that's fine.
Yeah. So like they spend some time in that fucking like cabin being all fucking lovey-dovey.
Being all lovey-dovey, but like having their separate beds that they sleep in, like.
Yeah, right, because they're still like 14 and 15 at this point, right?
This is definitely true. But like it does definitely strike me how like stunningly chaste like Sword Art Online is, where like the biggest like expression of like affection between like any characters is like, yeah, okay, these two are like sleeping peacefully in a bed next to each other and like not touching each other at all.
Yeah.
It is definitely this weird contrast with like how enthusiastic the show gets about imperiling women later on.
Mm-hmm. Or even just showing them in the fucking bath.
Yeah. It is very strange how like decoupled the like the show's leering for these characters is from like the sense that like Kirito cares about that at all.
Yeah. So they get a daughter.
They get a daughter. They get like a 12-year-old infant baby computer daughter.
Get a 12-year-old infant baby computer daughter.
This character's vibes are just so fucking weird to me the entire time. I do not like the 12-year-old infant baby computer daughter.
Yeah.
There's not much interesting about her to me. Like there is no real like interesting question of like AI personhood or anything, or even like interesting exploration of it. She's just like, here is your like computer daughter who is alive and loves you and is like here to tell you how like significant your relationship is. Like she exists as this like mental health management system for like the game Sword Art Online, because like we get this reveal of how like the whole game is just like algorithmically run and balanced the entire time, and somehow this hasn't like gone catastrophically wrong. But like she's part of like thing that like manages the well-being of the player base, and she has this whole thing about how like Asuna and Kirito's beautiful love makes them the most mentally healthy people in Sword Art Online. And it's like an inspiration to her, and she has to like get close to them to find out what's up with it. And it's like,
it's so fucking funny.
It's so funny. Just like the most brazen attempt to like just take a shortcut out of actually writing the relationship and just be like, don't worry, they're the most in love in the world because like the computer that knows everything said so.
So like her name's Yui.
I did not remember her name. She like I just wrote down computer daughter in my notes every time.
Okay, her name's Yui, and like they find her, and at first they think she's a player who had like lost memory or like regressed mentally because of trauma, because it's a traumatizing thing that's happening.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and they do all kinds of stuff with her. They like wait for her to wake up. You know, they like take care of her for a while. They bring her to like the starting city where like a daycare has been set up, where like some people look after all the like kids in the game. And then she deletes a really strong monster with like dev commands that was about to kill Asuna and Kirito, and then she goes away.
She goes away, like Kirito has to like use his like last minute hacker skills to like save her code in an orb or something.
Yeah. First time Kirito has hacker skills, by the way.
Yeah, I mean, Kirito is extremely a guy who has facts about him just sort of come and go as necessary.
Yeah. It's just weird. Yui is weird. Yui's a weird character.
Yui is weird, right? Well, I can't feel like particularly settled about the vibes of like here's the child character who acts like an even younger child than she looks like, right? Like I just can't like.
Yeah, it's not great.
I just can't feel like anything good is going on there, you know?
Yeah. She could have just been like 12.
Mm-hmm.
But then they don't get a baby daughter.
Right, like she's like filling this like multi-purpose fantasy of like having a daughter where like you don't have to worry about any of the like fucking like annoying shit about a baby, I guess, but like she also like acts like a sweet baby who knows nothing about the world and like can't say your names right.
Mm-hmm. So after that whole fiasco, they get called back to the front lines. There's like a boss fight that doesn't go well. Kirito notices something weird about Heathcliff, acts on it, right? And then it's revealed that Heathcliff was actually, what's-his-face, the guy that made the video game.
Akihito Kayaba? Or Akihiko Kayaba?
Yeah, something like that. I don't fucking remember.
Yeah, it doesn't matter.
It doesn't fucking matter, and then...
He's the guy who made the video game, and he's like, that's fine, because you noticed I'm the guy who made the video game, I will let you out of my gamer prison if you defeat me in a duel.
Yeah. And then he doesn't, but he does, but he doesn't, but he does.
Right. This is the first instance of something that seems like it is a problem with Sword Art Online, like based on this, like the 2 story arcs in this season, which is that this show is really bad at having a climactic battle that is any good.
Right. So like Kirito dies, but he doesn't.
Mm-hmm.
But he does, but he doesn't.
Yeah, right. Like Kirito's about to take a killing blow, and like Asuna jumps in front of it and like takes it and dies, and then like Kirito is so sad about Asuna dying that he gets stabbed and then dies. But then like the power of their love brings him back, so he can like weakly stab like at Heathcliff, and then they both like die or whatever, and go to like a special space where they can like talk to the creator of Sword Art Online about his like beautiful gamer's dream.
Mm-hmm.
It just kind of feels like it's like, okay, it's time to be done with this. So let's put a bow on it and we're done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, if I was making a game where if you die in the game, you die for real, I just wouldn't program in the part where if you love somebody enough, you can just like be alive for a couple more little bits.
Would have been a way better idea. Like the part where like Kirito's having this conversation with this guy about like the guy's like, yeah, I guess I don't really know why I created the death game that traps people in it. I just really wanted to believe there could be like a floating castle in the sky somewhere. And Kirito's like, yeah, man, I bet there is. And they've like established this mutual respect between them that just kind of like...
It's unhinged. It doesn't work.
It's a little unhinged.
You know, if you wanted to believe that there could just be like a castle in the sky somewhere or something like that, you could just make the video game and then not have it kill people.
But it would be less real, Gwen.
That's good sometimes, I think.
Yeah, probably. But I mean, I guess that's like the broad strokes. Like, here's what happens in this half of the season. There's like a few other things I want to touch on. I do want to talk about how like the show engages with like video game mechanics. In terms of like what the modern standards for this thing are, it feels so much more limited. And like again, this is like the original Sword Art Online web novel was like written in like 2002. So like the standards by which I'm comparing it against didn't exist.
Yeah.
But like, you know, in this sort of like super video gaming thing, you like expect a lot of people to have like unique skills that factor into fights. And like in Sword Art Online, you know, like Heathcliff has a unique skill because he's like the fucking like mod who made the game, and Kirito has like a special skill of being able to hold 2 swords because Heathcliff saw him and was like, you are the best gamer in this video game, so I'm giving you a special skill. And that's like the sum total to which anybody has like developed any like particularly unique ability, and like the sum total to which it is like grounded in any like here's what the mechanics of the video game are. And like when I read more modern stuff like this, I'm so used to like, yeah, here's all these like weird arcane like skill unlock conditions and like these like one time only pieces of equipment with like particular abilities or whatever, right? And like Sword Art Online just isn't interested in that in a way, which is like kind of fascinating because like I don't think it fully like disregards like game mechanics in some other places, but The fact that that preoccupation just isn't there is interesting.
Yeah, like the culture just isn't there yet in 2002, right? Like that whole like thing of like the sprawling fucking like skill nets that like the main character finds like a really like broken setup or whatever and like it's really strong. Just like wasn't it just wasn't a thing.
It is an interesting point in terms of like there's a lot like you could like trace back to start line like yeah this was present even then. So and that is interesting as like a thing that is like just not there. But like I think there are some like really fun ways that like the game just like sort of like casually plays with the idea of like game abstractions. Like I think it's really cute whenever somebody like punches a wall or something and like the fucking like pop up pops them is like hey you can't destroy this thing's indestructible.
Immortal object.
Yeah, immortal object. Like there's like a scene where like Kirito is like drops a sandwich on the ground and rather than it just like spilling across the ground, it's like durability hits 0 and it just like turns into like a bunch of like sparkles, which is like a cute bit on its own, but it's also like a clue and a mystery in a fun way.
Yeah.
There's some fun stuff with like the ways in which like various things you can do in the game just wind up being like these very abstracted versions of themselves, right? Like there's one episode where Kirito meets this blacksmith girl. And like to her, blacksmithing is like it is like extremely abstracted process of where like she like is hitting some metal and like some bars fill up and it turns into a sword.
Mm-hmm.
And there's an extent to which like she finds like a fulfillment in like the crafting of that and like the way she can engage with that even while it's the super abstracted thing that I think is like interesting if a little underexplored. And there's a similar moment with Asuna where she's like maxed out her cooking skill, which like I mean I'm a little suspect of because it's just her fitting into like the super perfect wife slot. But like she talks about how like it's just like really unsatisfying because you just like tap some shit with a knife and it like dices itself and there's no real like tactile feeling to like cooking in this world in a way that she like creates this like real disconnect for her. And I think it's like I think it is a pretty fun consideration of like the ways in which this is a video game.
Yeah, right. Because like I would be super unsatisfied being a crafter in that world, right? Like.
Mm-hmm.
I want to fucking do it.
Like with the blacksmith girl, there's a bit where she like finds some like new metal and like makes it a new sword. And she's like, yeah, I don't know what this is. Like nobody's ever made this before. It's not like she like made it into that herself. It's just like, yeah, you've like activated the crafting recipe and created this sword that like hasn't been identified yet.
Yeah,
and it's just not any of the books that people have like gathered about like what swords exist in the game yet. I think the different ways that people engage with that is like, you know, that is a thing that could be interesting, and like the little glimpses you get, I do find to be very interesting.
Mm-hmm. God, anything else we want to say about this first half?
Yeah, I mean, I want to talk about like Kirito again a little more broadly and like his arc in this first half of the season, in the sense that like I said earlier that Kirito is a guy who just kind of has stuff like become true about him as necessary. And I feel like this is very much the thing that kind of defines his arc, where like some stuff will happen and then he will like say what it means to him and it just won't really line up with anything he's done.
Mm-hmm.
Like when he like finally teams up with Asuna again, like it's because of the way that like the show frames it and like his inner monologue goes, like you're meant to take it as this moment of like, oh yeah, Kirito has like decided to let somebody in and like rely on somebody and like have somebody by his side and realizes that this makes the game easier. But like also Kirito is always the guy who's like letting people in, right? Like the circumstances that cause him to like move on from people are like rarely the fact that he doesn't want to, until like he has this moment with Asuna and suddenly it was about how he didn't want to. Like in the very first episode when he's like talking to like his friend that he met in the game on the first day, he's like, hey, you should come with me while I like follow my like super secret leveling route that I know about because I was in the beta. And like he does want that. He's just like, yeah, I can't take like more than one person with me on that, right?
Yeah.
And it is weird how often the show gestures at the idea that Kirito is a person who's like pushing away these connections when he's just not that guy.
He's just not that much of a sad boy. I mean, like he is, but like he's not.
Like even in the episodes where he's like wandering into people's lives and like wandering away again, he's not like he isn't really coming across like the guy who like can't ever stay anywhere. He's just like, yeah, I'm gonna go do some other stuff now. It just fails to create any of the groundwork for like the own thing it is presenting as like the central arc of this character, which means that he just sort of falls like very flat the entire time and doesn't really seem to feel any way about anything.
Yeah, I mean, like nail on the head, right? Like Kirito from Sword Art Online is like a weird nothing character.
Yeah. We're like blowing the doors off on this one. We're really like coming out strong with our like wildest takes.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think we can move on to like the second arc of the show, where I get meaner.
Yeah, me too. All right, so Kirito wakes up in the hospital. Asuna does not. Asuna is still trapped in the game somehow.
Yeah. Do you want to just like run down the plot of this half of the show because it's like pretty light, and then just go over more detail, right?
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. Asuna is still like stuck in the game. Like she hasn't woken up from like her like VR induced coma yet. Kirito like gets a tip from somebody he knew in the game that's like, hey, there's a picture of somebody who looks a lot like Asuna in this other game. Kirito also like is going to visit Asuna in the hospital, and there's like a pervert freak man who is like, I'm going to marry Asuna while she's unconscious, and her dad said I could, so it's okay. Kirito goes and plays this other game and learns that like where Asuna is at the top of the world tree, which is something that nobody has ever like successfully done, even though it is like the main objective of the game. Like it's just not something anybody has pulled off yet. And so he's like, I'm gonna have to do it. In the game, he meets like a blonde titty elf who is secretly his real life sister. And there's a lot of consternation about like his sister falling in love with him that is just unpleasant.
Oh yeah.
Kirito does some shit. He gets in some fights along the way, and then he like reaches the like city where the world tree is, and then like goes up there, and he goes and he saves Asuna, and he kills the pervert in game who is like imperiling Asuna this whole time. And then I don't know. Is there more after that, really? Or like points you want to bring up about the plot of this half of the season that I glazed over?
No, I mean that's basically it.
Yeah, it's a pretty light plot.
And like this part is shorter than the previous part too.
Mm-hmm. It is shorter, but it also is like basically just concerned with like its main plot, right?
Yeah. This part fucking sucks. I hate it.
This part fucking sucks, right? Like, the first half of this show, I was like, yeah, I mean, this is, like, kind of inept in a lot of ways, but it's also, like, weirdly charming at times, and, like, it has only grown in my estimation after watching this half, because, like, I put in episode, like, 15, I think, is the first half of this arc, or the first episode of this arc, and, like, the show immediately feels like it's just fucking melting, right? There's like a flashback to like Kirito's mom and sister like sitting in his hospital room and like expositing facts about him directly to the camera that is like some of the hackiest shit I've ever seen in the world. we meet our villain for this arc, who is like, I am planting my flag in him being like the least fun you can possibly have listening to Takahito Koyasu.
Yeah.
This guy like fucking sucks, and I don't just mean in the sense that like so much of his deal is about like being a sexual threat to Asuna. I mean, he's just really fucking boring, and he's on screen a lot.
Yeah, he is.
There are like two facts about him. One is that he wants to be like a sexual menace to Asuna. Two is that he has like a secret plan to like use like a VR games to like control people's minds, and he's like contracted with the US government or whatever to like figure this out, and he's like an evil guy. And he has, like, lengthy scenes in almost every episode of this part where he basically just says one of those things at length to the camera. And it's fucking awful.
Yeah.
It's just, like, the perfect balance between, like, dull and uncomfortable the entire time.
Yeah, okay. And, you know, I want to say something. You know how, like, Asuna was, like, barely a character by the end of the first half?
Yeah.
Now... the only time when she is on screen, it is for this man to sniff her.
Yeah. This is a perfect time to share one of my favorite Sword Art Online images on the world from the Sword Art Online Confessions blog on Tumblr.
Okay. All right.
The image reads, I'm sick of people calling Asuna a damsel in distress and a bad character because she fell in love with Kirito and was later trapped in a cage with a pervert and no way to defend herself. It's fucking unbelievable. Like Asuna's also in this position of like only being there for the villain scenes, basically, where like, again, there's fucking nothing going on. There is a moment where she like sneaks out on her own, like she like has like managed to learn the code to the cage she's locked in, and she's like sneaking into the like the wider base, and like she discovers his evil plan that she like already knew about, but it's like played as like a big shocking reveal a second time.
Yeah.
And then like she just gets menaced some more, but like this time it's by like some weird tentacle guys, because of course.
Yeah. Okay. Literally. I was watching this part with my friend, right?
Sorry.
No, it's okay. It's fun. And right, like we saw the big slug guys with like the tentacle faces, and I was just like, boy howdy, I hope the reason I think they have tentacle faces isn't the reason they have tentacle faces. It was the reason they had tentacle faces.
I am not trying to be like, aha, anime and tentacles, you know, it's just like that. Because, like, you know, anime is not like that broadly. But, like, the instant those guys crawl on screen and it's like, here are the only, like, non-human avatars for like somebody that is like a person in a video game in the entire show, and they look like this. It's like, okay, this isn't going anywhere good because I know what every one of Asuna's scenes in this half of the show has been like.
Right. Also, can like I just say, like, imagine you're like contracted for like a company that's working with the U.S. government to like build some like VR tech, and you like log into your like VR office space, and you're a giant slug monster with a tentacle face.
Yeah, your boss is like, yeah, I'm like a fucking like twink fairy king.
I'm a twink fairy king, and you're a slug monster with a tentacle face.
I would not like to work there. I would quit.
Yeah. Also, it is your job to wrap up any girls you see.
It's bad. It's just bad. Do you have more you want to say about Asuna here?
No.
Another thing that I couldn't stop thinking about watching this part is like, there is another expression in terms of like the ways that Sword Art Online is just sort of like out of sync with what like modern shows like this are. Because like when I'm watching like what's going on with Kirito in the game and like his situation, like mechanically speaking, I could very easily imagine like a different show that was built around the premise that we kind of get here. Because like what happens with Kirito is that he logs in and he picks the race of his character based on like which guys are wearing black, because of course he does.
Yeah.
And then, like, it turns out that those guys are, like, the worst in the meta. Like, nobody who is, like, seriously trying to play the game plays them because they have, like, shitty magic and bad skills. This is one of those things that, like, feels like the premise to, like, a modern show where you've got a guy who, like, is really good at this other game, and he plays this new game, and he picks, like, a non-meta option, and then he has to, like, work extra hard to be good at the game using his non-standard skill set. But, like, they just immediately, like, bypass that and bypass any tension of, like, Kirito being in this disadvantageous position. First, by just giving him, like, extremely broken, better stats than everybody else in the game.
Yeah, because he has the stats from Sword Art Online because reasons.
And second, by just kind of, like, seeming to make his, like, bad magic work different than everybody else's.
Yeah.
The race that he picks is, like, best at illusion magic and isn't that good at, like, a lot of other things. And so there's, like, a scene where, like, a bunch of guys are attacking him on a bridge. First of all, this fight is fucking terrible because so much of it is just Kirito like running at guys at a bridge and like hitting their shields and doing nothing and then having fireball shot at him. It's like one of the worst fights I've seen in an anime ever. But also, the resolution to this fight is that Kirito is like going to cast his illusion magic and everybody's like, wait, Kirito, don't do that. It's just going to make you look like a big monster. You're not going to do anything. But then he just turns into like a big monster anyway and kills them all as a big monster. And like just sort of plays it off and like, yeah, I don't really know what happened. I entered like a gaming berserker stage.
Yeah, right? Like, well,
the show just feels like it's fucking melting, like, on a narrative level at this point. Like nothing fucking matters.
And, like, I can see the version of that scene that is, like, something, right?
Uh-huh.
Where it's like, yeah, I know I made the illusion of the big monster, but then I just, like, flew around inside the monster shape really fast to make sure that whenever I, like, touched something, it was actually, like, me and my sword or whatever. Or, like, me picking someone up and, like, tossing them, right?
Right, but, like, unless I missed something, it's not that.
No, it's not that, because, like, I'm pretty sure there are points where, like, the monster is touching two different people at, like, more than a Kirito's width.
Yeah.
So, like, something's going on.
It's baffling. And, of course, the entire arc, he is, like, accompanied by, like, his sister, who he doesn't know is his sister in-game. And there is, like, so much consternation over, like, her like, falling in love with him and like, him, like, kind of flirting with her. And, like, it just... I mean, it sucks. Obviously.
Yeah, it sucks. Also, pew, the gun went off.
Yeah, but also, the entire time, I'm just like, bro, you're fucking married!
You're fucking married! You're literally here to save your wife!
Like, what are we doing here?
What are we doing here? Oh my god. Right? And then, when they find out about it, like, like when they recognize each other, fucking finally.
Uh-huh.
She drops this whole thing where she's like so mad at him and so mad at herself because the reason she was falling in love with him in the game and like the reason that meant a lot to her was it meant that she was falling out of love with the real Kirito. Right?
This seemed like fucking drove me crazy because the whole time I thought the deal was that like she knew this was like the real Kirito and like he didn't know it was his sister. Because, like, she made herself look like a blonde titty elf with, like, a completely different name. And, like, Kirito made him look like himself with elf ears. And, like, a name that is very similar to his real name that I just sort of assumed she would have heard about from like any time that he talked about being in Sword Art Online. I was so certain that she was aware that these were the same people.
Yeah. Guess not.
Guess not. It's just agonizing and constant, and I've got no stomach for it. And like, also, like, her entire narrative role is basically just to be carrying around Kirito's second sword when he doesn't need it.
Yeah. Which is rough, because he only uses it like twice.
Yeah. He uses it twice. Once in like the one good fight in this entire half of the season.
Yeah. I want to talk about that fight a little bit.
I do too, actually, yeah. This is like a real stand-up moment to me in the show, both because like, this is one of the 3 episodes storyboarded by Takahiro Shikama, who is a like really talented animator and like action director who, like, in addition to storyboarding 3 episodes of the show, was also like the action director on like half of the show. Like, basically whenever he's around is when like the fights in the show look the best that they are, and like this is the best looking one of these. It's like super loose. It's the only time that like the show really makes use of the fact that all of the characters can fly and like staging the action in an interesting way.
Mm-hmm.
And also, the guy that Kirito's fighting is an antagonist that is not motivated by being the Joker or by hating women. He is just a guy who is like playing the game as intended in a way that like kind of rubs Kirito the wrong way and like interferes with like the thing he's trying to do right now.
Yeah. Right, because the whole thing about fucking Alfheim Online is that it is a big, like, faction game where you're trying to get your guys to be the first guys to get up the world tree, right? And this guy is just the main fighter guy of the faction that is just up against the faction that the fucking sister is with, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, and that's it.
Yeah, right? Like, he's just a guy. He's just a guy, and that makes him, like, a better antagonist than everybody else in the show. Well, like, because, like, this half of the show is, like, even beyond the main villain who we talked about, it is just very rife with, like, random guys who, like, hate women and want to menace them. Like, when Kirito logs in for the first time, he runs into his sister who is, like, being chased by guys who are like, hell yes, I can't wait to kill a woman.
Yeah, fuck off.
There's, like, an underdeveloped guy on, like, his sister's faction who is, like, betraying them, who, like, also, like, hates women additionally on top of that. And, like, but no, this guy who shows up to, like, attack this, like, peace conference to, like, you know, get his, like, faction standing higher in, like, a video game where this is just, like, a thing you do in the video game, you know? Like, he's just a dude.
Yeah.
And he fights characters like, damn, you're a pretty good gamer. I'd like to fight you again someday. And it's like, this is, like, he is still sort of, like, warped around Kirito's existence, but, like, he is, like, the least that anybody in the show is warped around Kirito's existence in terms of, like, either needing to idolize him or, like, needing to, like, be a threat to women that Kirito can protect women from.
Yeah. Also, he is the only character in the show that hints at, like, broader game mechanics beyond the, like, very basic stuff we see Kirito do all this fucking time.
Right, like, because he's got, like, a unique sword that, like, you can't block, right? Like, he's got, like, a special piece of equipment that makes him, like, especially formidable, and Kirito has to figure out how to fight him. And it's, like, again, it's, like, very basic shit for, like, staging a fight in, like, an interesting way. It like, actually, it is a fight that has, like, stakes unto itself, and, like, the guy has, like, his own stuff that he's trying to do, and it is also just the best looking fight in the show, which, like, kind of makes this guy stand out a lot.
Yeah. And also, during the fight, something that I found was very charming is that whenever, like, something cool happened, like, all the people on both sides were just like, yo!
Yeah, it's great.
Because it's just a cool PvP fight in a video game.
Yeah, and everyone's like, yeah, this is awesome. Because, again, it looks fucking sick.
Yeah. Right, like, people are fucking cheering. Like, cheering when the guy on the other team wins, too, right? Because it was just fucking cool. And it doesn't matter because it's a fucking video game.
Yeah, it's great. Like, the actual, like, dramatic conclusion of this arc is, like, way fucking weaker. Like,
yeah.
But both in terms of, like, the lead up to it and the actual confrontation, like, the lead up is, like, throughout this whole half of the season, we keep talking about, like, nobody's figured out how to get up the world tree, you know? Like, we don't know how to do it. Like, we suspect you might have to work together, but we haven't really figured out. Everybody is, like, searching for, like, a hidden quest that, like, will help them out with it. And then, like, Kirito gets to, like, the city where the world tree is, and, like, suddenly his sister's like, yeah, I know what quest you need to take. It's just that nobody's been able to beat it before.
Yeah, it's just weird.
It's just weird. It's like, there's just no real sense of, like, consistency to, like, any of this. It can't set any, like, stakes within the game that, like, are, like, you know, maintain themselves across multiple episodes in a way that is just kind of, like, frustrating and baffling to watch. There's also, like, So Kirito's like, okay, I'm gonna go like take on this like challenge that nobody else has ever completed before alone, and he like gives it his best shot, and he like can't quite do it. And like the show, it does like this extremely half-assed attempt of like, okay, now everybody's gonna show up to like help Kirito, but because there's no fucking characters in this half of the show, that means that like 3 people show up and like a bunch of nameless guys.
Yeah, it's his sister's friend who has like a crush on her.
Uh-huh. And then there's like the 2 leaders of like the factions that were having a peace talk, who like are just the most broadly painted characters of like, here's a big titty elf and like a smaller cat girl, and they both like decide they have a crush on Kirito after he games really well.
Also, like, apparently the cat girl faction can just ride dragons, and I can't believe that's not the one that everybody fucking chose.
Yeah, unbelievable.
Because like, one, cat girl, obviously, come on.
Yeah.
And you can ride dragons, come on.
And you can ride dragons. Alright, now Kirito, like, with the help of like all of these like barely extant characters, he like, you know, gets his way all the way up to the top. He uses like an admin key that Asuna dropped from the top of the tree earlier, and like the one thing she sort of does, which still is like barely doing anything in this entire half of the show.
Yeah.
He goes to confront the villain, and it is one of the most interminable scenes I've ever fucking watched in my life.
It was, oh my god.
Like, even past the point where it's like, okay, the guy is like, he's like, okay, I'm going to now, like, I am done just making overtures towards being a sexual menace to Asuna, and now I'm just going to go do it, and I'm going to start tearing her clothes off, and it's fucking gross, and, like, it just sort of plays out, like, leeringly and extensively while Kirito's, like, pierced to the ground with a sword. But then, like, also once Kirito, like, gets back up, it just goes on for so much longer as Kirito's doing his, like, epic, like, I'm slowly killing the guy and chopping him up, and he's feeling so much pain. Aren't you satisfied seeing this? And I'm not satisfied seeing this because this guy is still fucking on screen. And he's not interesting.
Yeah, and it's fucking boring. It's boring to see.
It's not a cool fight, because the guy isn't good at fighting. Kirito's just fucking chopping him up. The show's bad.
The show is just bad.
Oh, God. I don't know, like, nothing in this half of the show, like, works at all for me, except for, like, the one fight we talked about extensively.
Yeah. So, okay, we should, like, finish describing what happens in the show, right? Because, like, Kirito saves Asuna, she wakes up in the hospital or whatever. Kirito goes to see her right away, and he is confronted by the guy he just chopped up, ready to fucking knife him in the parking lot.
Yeah, they have, like, a shitty knife fight in the parking lot. But, like, I guess it's okay that this fight is shitty because they're, like, not, like, their gamer selves. I did kind of want Kirito to just kill a guy in the parking lot. I just wanted to see, like, the version of Sword Art Online where, like, he has to deal with the fact that that's what happened in his life.
Yeah.
But he just mercifully turns the guy over to the cops or whatever.
It would be so fucking good if, like... Okay, I'm using the word good, like, broadly here. It would be so fucking good if Kirito just fucking, like, knifed him in the parking lot and was just like, I've already dealt with being a murderer, bye. I'm okay with this, actually.
Can you imagine, like, the version of, like, sort of, like, where, like, Kirito kills a guy in the parking lot, then he has to go to fucking jail, but then, like, the government's, like, secret team of super, like, criminal gamers that are, like, put together, like, the Gamer Suicide Squad, and he gets put in the Gamer Suicide Squad, he has to, like, solve game crimes. That probably also wouldn't be a good show, but it'd be, like, very funny.
It would be a better show than this, right? Because then he can fucking yearn for Asuna from behind the fucking plexiglass or whatever, right?
God.
Like, she can go and visit him in gamer prison.
Oh my god. I forgot to mention something that, like, I think is, like, fundamentally very cowardly about this whole half of the show.
Yeah?
Which is that, like, when Kirito wakes up in his hospital bed, he's, like, emaciated and fucked up and he can, like, barely walk. Asuna just looks fucking normal the entire time.
Asuna just looks fine. Girls are built different.
Girls are built different, I guess.
Yeah, girls are weak and don't move around anyway, so, like, being in a coma is basically no different, right? This fucking show.
This fucking show. There's, like, another, like, point of, like, wasted potential in this half of the show where, like, periodically we get, like, moments of, like, Kirito talking about, like, you know, like, readjusting to his life, trying to figure out, like, what he wants out of life, you know, if he wants to, like, go to, like, the special school for, like, all of the kids who were, like, trapped in Sword Art Online or not. But, like, we don't really get any sense of how he, like, feels about this. Like, we get these gestures towards, like, here is, like, the situation in the world, you know, here is, like, Kirito, like, exchanged information with the government about, like, the secrets of the video game. Kirito, like, just, like, choose between, like, you know, going to, like, this special sort of isolated school or, like, trying to, like, find, like, a different life where he can, like, try to be, like, at a normal school and fit in. But, like, there's no real point of reflection. There's no real, like, sense of how he feels about any of this. Like, it doesn't really get into anything other than, like, the logistics of how he might feel about having been, like, isolated from a normal life for, like, 2.5 years.
Yeah, I don't think the show's very good, Ruby.
They didn't really pull this off. Maybe in Sword Art Online Season 2 it'll be better, but, like, I'm not feeling this one.
Yeah, I'm not, like, very hopeful. Okay, so... Are we ready to do our, like, wrap-up?
Yeah, okay.
Okay.
Do we want to do coolest guy first, or do you want to do our grading first?
Let's do coolest guy first.
Okay, it's fucking Eugene, right?
Yeah,
the guy with the, like, special magic sword who, like, shows up and has, like, the one really good fight with Kirito. It's gotta be.
Yeah, it's Eugene. Like, only option, right?
Only option. Fucking easy shit.
Yeah. Okay. So coolest guy is Eugene. Easy. Like no contest.
No contest at all.
Like second place is the version of Asuna that was off screen becoming the second in command of the guild, right? Like no contest, it's Eugene. Okay. Alright, so we're gonna go through and give each of these, like, categories a ranking out of 10, and then we're gonna, like, drop the average and then, like, give it a grade, right? Like that is the thing we're doing. So why don't you start us off?
Okay, so first category, story.
It's not a big number.
It's not gonna be a very big number.
I want to give it, like, a generous 4 because of the parts in like the first half that I liked.
I could go for a generous 4.
Okay, let's give it a generous 4.
It is at its best when it's being a little more unfocused and just doing smaller stories, and, like, there is some of that, you know.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And so, like, we gotta give it props for, like, you know, there was a time where I was sitting down and be like, I wonder what's gonna happen in this episode of Sword Art Online, and not just dreading it, and I think that gets it up to a 4.
Yeah, totally.
Okay. Our next category is characters.
Characters, okay. I feel like this one is worse than story.
Yeah, because there's not really any
there's not any of those in the show.
Yeah, they forgot to put the characters in the show, and I don't know. I don't think anybody has that, like, striking or appealing of a design. I don't know. Like, nobody's gonna stick with me here, right?
No.
Even the coolest guy, Eugene, is, like, I don't know. There's other guys who have, like, cool one-episode fights in other better shows.
Yeah, he's just Sword Art Online Ganondorf, but, like, not cool in the same way.
I don't feel very good about this one. I think this is like a
2.
Sure, let's go for a 2.
Okay.
All right. Our third category is graphics.
Graphics.
Again, like, I kind of touched on this in the previous point. I don't really think the character designs are that good, right? Like, both in the sense that I don't think a lot of them have, like, really appealing concepts to them, but also I just don't really love the style. Even, like, the best animators and the best animation directors on the show are, like, kind of struggling against it. There's, like, one episode where Mai Yoneyama, who is, like, a fucking fantastic artist, is the animation director, right? And, like, it is an episode that is full of, like, drawings that I thought were great in a real sense, like, really, really nice line work, a really nice sense to them, but also, like, we're just so constrained by, like, I don't know, like, I just think the base concept of the character designs are just kind of weak, and, like, the style that the show is in is, like, very plain and doesn't have a lot to, like, commend itself. And that is definitely going to, like, cost us some points.
Like, almost none of the animation was, like, very fun to look at either, right? Like,
I'm not going to be like a little more generous to you on this, because I think there's, like, a lot of points where it's like, oh, hey, there's, like, some individual flair here. I think that, like, especially when Takahiro Shikama is around, there's, like, some really great stuff in there.
Mm-hmm.
And he is around a lot. He's, like, action director on, like, half of the episodes, and if you're looking for it in most of those episodes, you can find, like, a little bit of flair where, like, you know, there's some, like, nice dramatic movements. There's, like, some nice exaggerated line work in the action. But the show does look very plain a lot of the time. But, like, I think that there's some stuff to look for there.
Yeah. Okay.
I wish the environments for the show were, like, more interesting. I wish they felt more compelled to reach out and expand, and, like, I don't know, like, there's a few times where it's like, oh, this is kind of, like, an interesting place. This is, like, a very, like, this is, like, a distinctive, like, looking city, or, like, there's this one dungeon that they go to, like, the first half of the show, where it's, like all this, like, really abstracted backgrounds and, like, weird colors and shit, and that's, like, kind of cool. But, like, for the most part, it is very plain fantasy environments without a lot of, like, individual character to them, which I found kind of like a letdown.
Totally. What number are you thinking?
Maybe like a 6, but, like, not like a high 6, but it's kind of like, I kind of feel like a 6, right?
Yeah, I could give it a 6. I was thinking maybe like 5, but, like,
maybe 5, maybe 6. I don't know. Like I think like the real highs, like the one good fight that we talked about, I like kind of bumps it up to 6 because I think that's like a really great looking fight.
Yeah, I like that fight a lot.
Without that, it would definitely be a 5.
Let's go with 6.
Especially when we have to take into account that we are going to be watching like a lot of shows with like much tighter production situations than this one. Like especially once we like watch shows that are produced in the area where they're just like shoveling out these like seasonal isekai adaptations with like, you know, basically nothing behind them. I think we have to be like a little generous with the scale we're working on here.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me.
All right, are we ready to move on to the next category?
Yeah.
How about swords?
Okay, so I'm torn. I think if we take just the first arc, it is the highest rating out of all the ratings so far. I would put it at a solid like 8, probably like a 7 based like on the swords individually. But the fact that in like the early parts he has like different gear every time, I found very charming, and I'm willing to bump it up one just from that alone, right? So like I want to put it at like an 8 here. However, the Alfheim swords are just bad.
Yeah, I don't really remember any of the Alfheim swords, right?
Lifa's like katana or whatever was like fine, and like Eugene's sword was pretty cool. But like Kirito's main sword that he had through the whole thing like sucks really bad.
It
like
sucks. It's a bad sword, and like he's not like I don't know, like the way in which he fights doesn't feel like dramatically different now that he's like a big sword guy instead of like a small sword guy.
Yeah. So I think I want to drop it down to 6.
Okay, all right. Oh, I just remembered something that fucking annoys me about the second half of this show. This doesn't have anything to do with swords, but can I say it?
Yeah.
I was so fucking annoyed that when he goes into a different game, it's the same fucking UI.
Yeah.
It just feels like a trick they missed really hard, and being able to make those games feel more distinct. But like they have the exact same user interface, and it just bummed me out. I was like kind of like excited to see if they were gonna like mix that up, and they just didn't, and it was a real letdown.
Yeah, that's a shame. All right, are we ready to move on from swords?
Yeah. Okay. How about elves?
Elves. Well, it can't be very high. There aren't many elves in the first part.
But yeah, the first part is like completely elfless, basically, and that's not earning many points. The second part is like it's got a lot more elves, and I think it's fun that you've got like a bunch of different kinds of elves. Like, you know, they're like, I guess maybe they're like sort of fairies or whatever. There's like a fairy like king and queen theming going on with like fucking like the villain calls himself Oberon and he tries to call Asuna Titania or whatever. So there's like fairy stuff, but like I'm giving them provisional elf status, and I think it's fun that you got your cat girl elves, and you've got like your forest elves, and you've got like your water elves and stuff. Like I think it doesn't really get into that enough to like get full marks on that. So I think that like I think that brings it up to like about a 6 because there's like, you know, they tried to make a bunch of different elves, but then when like knock another point off of it because you don't spell elves with an A, you fucked up really bad.
Yeah. Okay. That's
a 5.
Yeah, that's a very good observation. Okay, so that puts us at an average of 4.6.
That's not great. Oh jeez.
That's really not good.
Oh boy.
Okay,
Sword Art Online, you gotta try harder next time.
You just gotta try harder, and then just like, all right, if you were to give this one a grade,
I kind of feel like there is an extent to which I know that the potential of the genre is like so much more noxious.
Yeah,
like it can also be so much better, but like it can be so much worse. Like I just kind of feel like D on this one.
Yeah, I was gonna call it D or like D minus.
I wasn't thinking about like, you know, like minuses and plus and stuff, but you know, if we want to be doing that, we can be doing that.
Yeah, we can be doing that. This whole thing is fake.
But like even if we're doing it, I still kind of feel like D.
Okay. Yeah, a D works perfectly fine with me.
I think that gives us, you know, room for like, you know, whenever we get around to the next season of Sword Art Online and like subsequent seasons, we can kind of adjust like a little more dramatically if it's like a little worse next time, but like going all the way to F, you know.
Yeah. Okay.
I want a little bit of extra room to like marginally monitor the like our changing opinion of Sword Art Online as we continue to engage with it. Not next time though. We're taking a break from Sword Art Online.
Yeah. No. Jesus Christ.
I guess, I mean, in terms of ranking these right now, this is the only show we've watched for the podcast, so this is number 1, I suppose.
This is, I suppose, number 1.
This is, by a technicality, number 1.
Yep. Okay.
I hope it's not number 1 next time. I would like to watch a better show next time.
Oh yeah, me too. Hey, hi.
Hi.
Me too.
You too? That's great.
Yeah. Okay. Awesome. So I think that's that. For the next episode of Narou-Kei Uzumaki, there will be a poll on the Patreon to like, pick out what show we watch. So like keep an eye out for that. This is going up on our main feed, so like, hey, if you like this show, you're not going to get any more of it unless you give us $5 on our dang Patreon. So like, hey, check us out.
Also, if you like this one, this is the first episode of a podcast. That's never the best episode. The next ones are going to be even better.
Yeah, no, we were like totally unprepared. Anyway, check out our Patreon, patreon.com/KonohaCrush. You can check out our Twitter, at KonohaCrush, all one word. And, I guess that's that.
Guess that's that.
I guess that's that. I don't really have like a sign out for this one.
We'll figure that out eventually.
Yeah, we might figure that out. There might be a sign out. Who knows?
Who knows?
Later.
Until next time.
Later.
Later.